Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
We see the syphilitic shrinking obelisk, the white man's wilting dick. We see through dangling jowls of seedy game show trolls the smiling lie of the televised hive. The witches are watching with their thousand eyes. Witches are watching with their thousand eyes. We smell rotten teeth that speak beyond belief. A stick inside their skull would...
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 69. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics. Attention comic book fans, Lee's Comics in Mountain View, California has closed. But here's the good news. Lee's Comics eBay store is still going strong with over 10,000 vintage comics, the majority of which are now on sale, for half off. Choose from Lee's huge stock of golden, silver, bronze, and modern age comics, and specializing in Silver Age Marvel titles. You can count on friendly service, accurate grading, and quick, secure shipping backed by a money-back guarantee. To check out Lee's eBay store, go to eBay. Click Advanced Search to the left of the search bar, scroll down to Sellers, and enter Lee's Comics Inc., period. That's LeesComics, period. Don't forget the period. Lee's Comics is shipping daily with no delays. New items daily. Mention the Fun Ideas Podcast and get a free bonus gift. The following interview was recorded prior to the COVID-19 shutdown. Any appearances mentioned by our guest have either been postponed or canceled. We hope that you and your family are coping during this pandemic. The final episode of this season was scheduled for the first week in May, but since many are quarantined, I have decided to do a few more new episodes during the summer break. Let me know what you think. And here are some recent comments about this podcast. I really appreciate the kind words. Here's a 5-star review on iTunes from the Bucket of Blah Blah. It says, great guest, skilled interview. Arnold has a good pop culture pedigree, so he gets terrific guests and knows the right questions to ask. The ideas presented are indeed fun. Another one from Gallery. Informative and fun interviews of comic insiders. I just listened to Mark Arnold's interview with Peter Bagg. It was excellent. Great history on the hows and why Mr. Bagg got into comics and interesting insights of his career. And here's another one that's on Podomatic from Julia Cole. This is a great interview with P. Bagg, one of my favorite artists. I've been buying his work since the Weirdo days, and I have a complete collection of both neat stuff and hate. This was a real treat to listen to. And now the Fun Ideas Productions news. I'm still waiting for the Warren Kremer book, and I just turned in the Total Television scrapbook. Beetlefest has been postponed from March to October 2020, and our travel agency has also been postponed for the time being. I am currently working on articles about Hee Haw, Sid and Marty Krofft, Underdog, and the Pink Panther for Back Issue magazine, as well as the Mad Book and possibly a Disney book. Our guest today is back, and she wants to talk restaurants. Here she is, Denise McKinney. Okay, on the phone today, I have the return of Denise McKinney. Yay!
Thanks for having me back.
How are you?
I'm good.
Well, wanted to discuss your love for restaurants, because you don't just go to like a Denny's or a McDonald's or something like that. You try to seek out some really weird ones, and so that's why I kind of want to discuss what qualifies the restaurants that you tend to go to, and what restaurants do you miss, and what ones do you still want to get to on your list?
Okay, well, I wouldn't say weird weird is the choice word for restaurants. But, I mean, well, clearly, if you see me, I like to eat, right, But I like dining, and I like history, so I always think it's great to mix the two, and I like to go to vintage restaurants and bars, places that have been around forever. Just because, one, most importantly, they're disappearing, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole lot of different reasons. One is rent, right? Or, the property gets sold. A big reason vintage restaurants are disappearing is just the original family owners pass away, and their kids or grandkids don't want anything to do with it. So they end up getting sold or closed down. And another big reason is just people in general now don't eat that way anymore. Some do, but it's the taste of people are changing, and I'll get more into that. But I do enjoy going to old school restaurants. It's been different every time I go, but I really enjoy it, and I always like introducing people to old cool restaurants.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the great ones or good ones you've been to in the last couple months or so?
Well, I do live in Southern California, so we do have quite a bit of old restaurants, famous restaurants, and that are still around. Lately, and here's the problem I run into. So, why are you laughing? No, it's true. So, here's the big problem, though. So, I did not create. There's a list out there. I did not create the list. But years ago, when I came upon the list, I just noticed. I'm like, I've been to quite a few of these restaurants already. So I kind of was like, well, let's see what's on the list. When we're looking for somewhere to go, and it went from there. So that's why I don't always go off the list, and not every cool old restaurant is on the list. Mm-hmm. But I like having something down on paper, or that way it's just something to go back and look at. But the problem I come across is, do I go to a new old restaurant, or do I go to an old restaurant? Because
explain.
Because some of the restaurants I do go to are really good. Right, and I enjoy going.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right? I thought you meant it's new, like it's retro or something. It's like, okay, or something like that. No, I get what you mean. Okay.
Just off the list, right? So there's restaurants I've been to where, I enjoyed it and I want to go back.
No, you can never go again.
That's right. But then I feel like, well, I should go off the, scratch another one off the list. So, because not... What year are we in? 2020. So I want to say 2018. It did seem like my vintage restaurant dining was full steam, and that's when I hit 100 finally.
Wow.
At the end of 2018. Now some of those restaurants were closed down in between the beginning of the list, and now. So that always happens too. But lately. I've been hitting a lot more of Mexican restaurants. I think just because it's a change. Because a lot of, and we can talk about this. So a lot of vintage restaurants, classic restaurants, a lot of them still have that kind of eating, dining, like I was mentioning earlier. So a lot of it is heavy food, American comfort style food. And sometimes it's fun. Like when you go to like Musso and Frank's or Lowry's, they still incorporate the very old school way of dining, and it's really interesting and actually educational. Like when you go to Musso and Frank's, which is on Hollywood Boulevard, it's been there since 1918, and everyone just saw it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But it's exactly like you see it in the movie. Everything is exactly the same. So when you go and you're like, I want an appetizer, it's really old school stuff like celery stuffed with blue cheese and things you don't get anymore. Or do they still? I think they still have like tomato aspic and stuff. Wow. And I'm like, gross. But
I was gonna say, do you try any of this stuff, or are you just like?
I did. I got the celery. And it's fun to kind of eat that way. But here's the thing with Musso and Frank's, it's still good. Like their chefs are great, their bartenders, they've all worked there, are millionaires, and it's really great, right? You go to some vintage restaurants, and they're not so great. Because either they just don't care anymore, they're not sourcing the food like they used to. So it's, a fine line, but, Musso and Frank's proves that you can be a vintage restaurant and do it right. I've been to a lot of bad vintage restaurants, and I've been to some good ones, but that's why I think I've been getting the Mexican food lately, because it seemed like a while we were just hitting, like, American dining, comfort food kind of restaurants. And if you do notice, if you go on the list, you don't start getting more of the ethnic foods to at least hit, like, the 60s, even the early 70s. You'll have, like, Chinese food, but it's all American gross Chinese food.
Right.
Like, it's not authentic. Once you hit like late 60s, early 70s, you start seeing more like Japanese restaurants, Indian food, things like that. I even want to say like the first real Thai restaurant in LA on the list, I don't even think shows up until you hit like the 1970s. So the good thing is, because we are in the year 2020, 30 years ago is only 1990. Right. So she's, the girl who started the list, incorporating more stuff from the 1980s in there. So the variety is getting better for vintage dining.
Now, who created this list?
I forgot her name now, but she's a blogger on some website that deals with LA stuff, and she just started it because she liked all the signage, and it's kind of grown from there. And she adds stuff. Every month, I think, she updates it, and that's helped me in a way, because she'll add restaurants I've been to that weren't previously on the list, so it bumps up my number. So I'm like, all right, magically, I gained 5 new restaurants overnight, But, no, she's very thorough. Like I said, there's stuff, not on there, but, it eventually gets added, and I've discovered a lot of places I didn't know about, because it's true, you do just hear about the Musto and Frank's, the Cantors, the famous LA restaurants, but there's a lot of restaurants that no one's heard of that are equally good or have been around just as long.
Yeah, you could probably say that almost anywhere, but yeah. My familiarity more is in the San Francisco Bay Area, and so I know things there, although I did live in LA briefly as a kid. But I know certain restaurant chains that were down there that I don't even know if they're around anymore. I could rattle a few off, and you can tell me, because I haven't been to LA. I was there a year ago, but I did a quickie trip to do another podcast and a Stu show, and I was there a year ago also to do a documentary on Harvey, but I didn't really set foot in any restaurants because it was all taken care of. So ones I remember as a kid down there is like Me and Ed's Pizza. That's
still around, and one of the locations is on the list. And I did go. It was the one in Lakewood, California, which is still there. So that is there and on the list.
Why is that one on the list? Is it just because of that specific
That's a good question. There's other. No, because you're right. There's other Me and Ed's.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the only one that's still around, or the fact that maybe it's pretty original in there.
Okay.
I did notice like the ovens looked old, and they even said like Me and Ed on, like they were made specifically for Me and Ed.
Okay.
But no, that's a good question. I should go back and read it to see if that's the last one. But it is on the list, so it's legit. So.
Yeah. Well, I know, like, in going back to Northern California for a second, like, Round Table Pizza, the original one is still there. It's in, I believe, Menlo Park, California, which is halfway between San Jose and San Francisco. And it's just a smallish place compared to other locations. I don't know if Round Table's down in L.A. or not, but I think it was when I was a kid. But
it is.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was from Northern California, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
But no, we still have Round Tables out here. Yeah.
Okay. And then another one as a kid, I don't even remember if this restaurant was any good, but it was, I think, an Italian restaurant called Vince's of Ontario.
Oh, I love Vince's spaghetti. Yes.
Okay. I haven't been there. We're talking 40 years ago, so I don't know.
No, it's there. So the original is there in Ontario, right?
Yeah.
Vince's spaghetti.
Yeah.
Although when it started, it actually advertised French dip sandwiches almost more than the spaghetti. But I think just the spaghetti is so delicious, it kind of overtook it. You can still get French dips there, but when I go, it's like I'm always like, oh, I'm going to try it. But then I'm like, no, I want the spaghetti, But they did like break out a little bit and open up some other locations. There was one in Redlands and one in Torrance. Now there's just the original, and then there's one in Rancho Cucamonga, a.k.a. Cucamonga. But where that location is interesting because it's next door to the Magic Lamp Inn, which is a classic vintage restaurant. It's across the street from Sycamore Inn, which is another old classic restaurant, and it's all right there on Foothill Boulevard, which is Route 66. So the second Vince's there is actually a really great location. The spaghetti tastes the same at both locations, both just as good.
Okay. Let's see. I remember this is supposedly an upper class place, and I ate there a couple of times. Velvet Turtle, is that long gone? Or
those are gone.
Okay.
I never got to go to a Velvet Turtle. I remember seeing them when I was a kid, but I think they've been gone since the 90s.
Okay.
I do have some. They have a menu from there, and of course matches. But no, the Velvet Turtle was pretty big at the time. So yeah I totally understand how you remember that one.
And let's see, Jolly Roger. That was kind of like a family restaurant.
Yeah, that's not there. That was across from Disneyland.
There's one there, and there's also one in Redondo Beach, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
No, the one across from Disneyland was there for quite a while, but it's gone. I'm sure it got sucked into the convention center.
Oh, okay.
Because I think on that corner it's just nothing but the convention center now. So that's what happened at the Jolly Roger, unfortunately.
Okay. And then let's see. This one I didn't go as a kid, but I went. You mentioned French dip. I think it's French dip. Felipe's, isn't that?
Yep.
Yeah. Is that still around?
That's still there and still pretty good. And it's funny you mentioned that because, for people who don't know, Philippe's and Cole's, another restaurant, had like the French dip war, as I call it, because they both took credit for inventing the French dip. So there's always people that like Cole's versus Philippe, and I have matches from both. And it's funny because whoever the salesman was, the match salesman, talked them into it, but they both have the same stock art of a chef holding a sandwich, but it's for both locations. So I don't know what happened. Once they saw that, they're like, what? But no, and then Kohl's is still around, but unfortunately, the people who own Kohl's, it went downhill after that, are the same people who bought Clifton's Cafeteria, and you know how I feel about that, and now they don't even serve food there anymore. So, for French dips, go to Philippe's, and a place that's really underrated for their French dips, surprisingly, is Cantor's. So if you're at Cantor's, try their French dip because it's actually pretty good. I would say Philippe's is the best, but I would give Cantor's a good second on that French dip.
Cool. Let's see. One time I was down there years ago, and with an ex-girlfriend, and she says, "I want to go to Pink's Hot Dogs," and it's like, okay. And we ate there, and I wasn't that impressed, but I was curious about your thoughts. Obviously, I just got them.
Well, I'm not a fan. One, I don't like waiting in line.
Yeah.
And the line's always crazy there. I won't wait. Okay. I have never eaten anything where I've been like, like the wait was worth it. Right? I mean, I'll wait a half hour. Anything more than that, I'll leave because I don't think I've had anything my entire life that was worth waiting longer than a half hour. But I like Pink's Hot Dogs. I don't like their chili, right? And that's what they're supposedly known for. I've had worse vintage restaurants, but I am not a fan of Pink's. If you want a good hot dog, I would go to Carney's, which is there's two locations. One's on the Sunset Strip. One's in the valley, but they're in an old rail car, like a legit, real train car. And they have chili dogs, chili burgers, way better than Pink's. And you can sit even like outside, and it's great because you're right there on the strip. You get the great view, and the hot dogs are actually really good there. So, yeah, I would go to Carney's way before Pink's.
Let's see. And then, actually, unlike most of my shows, I actually did a little bit of research, but I was just kind of killing time. Look, curious about what happened to certain restaurant chains. And one of them actually was in business until last year, although off and on, and I was wondering if you got to it before they closed. It's Farrell's Ice Cream.
Oh, yes. Well, I had my birthday party at Farrell's, I want to say in 2014. Yeah. So I did. Now, I was a child. I went once to the original Farrell's, and then we tried to go back, and it was closed down. My local Farrell's, which was in Huntington Beach, California. So when they brought it back, they opened up one in Riverside, actually, not too far from my house. So I went there probably like 4 times when it was still open. The ice cream was fine. They used Thrifty's ice cream, which was delicious, right? I have no complaints about that. No, I had my birthday party there, and of course it's loud, you know. And but it was on, I don't know if you saw this, but it was on The Prophet, that show. And I used to watch. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
No, so if you saw it, or if anyone saw it, he went to Farrell's to, like, save them because they were, you know, broke. And he was like, oh, it's too loud in here. The noise is just too much. You're at Farrell's. What did you expect it to be, right? Like, you go there because it's loud, you know? And, you know, and then he made them change. Like, he got rid of the Thrifty's ice cream and all kinds of stuff. And, of course, it went out of business shortly after. So, unfortunately, maybe they were doomed anyways. But at least they got some, 15 minutes of fame being on the show. I don't know. But I did go to Farrell's, and it was fine.
Well, when you went, was it like it was in the old days or completely different?
No, it was, if I remember correctly, because I was a kid. But no, it was loud, and they had the pig's trough and the zoo, and you're sitting there, and every 5 seconds, it's like, right. It was someone's birthday. So the food was crap. The actual food was crap.
Well, I remember that as a kid. The food was crap. It was you went there for ice cream.
But the ice cream was fine. They all dressed the part. I remember when we went for my birthday, because it was in March. So they had a guy dress up as a leprechaun. Like, they took the shortest guy who worked there. Like, okay, you're the leprechaun. But he still had the handlebar mustache, or, like the curly mustache. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But no, it was, like I said, Farrell's is for, like, families and kids and loud. So if anyone expected different or didn't like it, that's on them, because it's not like it was a secret.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious about it. It's not supposed to be a sit-down, it's like, quiet place, it's supposed to be raucous. But anyway.
Yeah.
Another one that used to be all over the place, and then it went away, and now it's come back, but it's come back only down in your area, and so I'm wondering if it's as good as it used to be, or worse, or better. Bob's Big Boy.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to say something else, but...
Well, you could talk about whatever that is, too.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about that after, yeah. So, okay. Bob's Big Boy, it came back, and it's not bad. I mean, I guess... No. I hate to say, because I've had really good Bob's Big Boy since it's come back, and I've had some that's been meh, It never fully went away, because they had... If you go down to Southern California, the only, original one is the one there in Toluca Lake. And it's from the 40s, designed by Wayne McAllister. Everything is original. They're ginormous neon signs.
Excuse me.
It's okay. They have, they still have the car hop area. Friday nights, they have a car show, and then, Jay Leno will show up driving some steam-powered thing, That Bob's Big Boy is great. I think that one's open 24 hours. So if you want the old-school, legit Bob's Big Boy experience, go to that one. Yeah. But even then, that one was open, and there was a few other locations that were still hanging on. But then... I don't know if they just had, it's like, I'm pretty sure they're franchised now, but they started opening them again, and some are still around. The one I actually go to, if I don't go to the one in Toluca Lake, there's one in beautiful Norco, California, Horsetown, USA, and that Bob's Big Boy has a distinction of having the only customized Bob's Big Boy statue.
Ooh.
So the city of Norco, in case you guys don't know, which I'm sure you don't, not you, but everyone, Norco is, they call it, it's Horsetown, USA. There's more horses than people in this town. And so they kind of have like this faux California Western style about it. So starting in 2003, they passed the city ordinance saying that every new building has to look country western, right, or some kind of western motif. So when Bob's Big Boy rolls in, they're like, no, you need to look western. And they're like, hello, we're Bob's Big Boy. It's a coffee shop. So the middle was they have a Bob, and the Bob has a cowboy hat. And so if you want to get your picture taken with the only custom Bob's Big Boy, go to Norco, California, and you'll see him. And I will say, the guy who owns that Bob's Big Boy, he's really big into the community. There's all kinds of community events, and he's a real big giver to that community. So I do enjoy going to that Bob's Big Boy purely because of that. I like to support good business.
Cool. Now, I don't have my Southern California map in front of me, and so forgive me because I don't know where everything is. Toluca Lake, is that close? And you'll probably say no. Is that close to Burbank at all?
It's right next to Burbank.
Oh, okay.
So everyone calls that Bob's Big Boy Burbank. But
okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so that's supposedly the one that the Beatles went to, and the sign gets stolen all the time that says that they ate there.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
There's supposed to be a Beatles booth in there or something with some pictures. I don't know. Since you're down there, you might check it out. I mean, people steal the sign and they have to replace it, but
that's interesting. No, because it's right down the street from Warner Brothers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's by the studio. But since you mentioned booths, what else is interesting is if you go to the Tam O'Shanter, which I love a lot, and I do talk about that restaurant all the time. Walt Disney used to go there back in the day.
Right. That's right.
And they have the Walt Disney booth there at the Tam O'Shanter. So if you want, you can go sit in the Walt Disney booth. Also, if you go to Cantor's, they have the Rodney Bingenheimer booth there. So you can go sit in Rodney's booth. But Rodney might actually be there. So
ooh, scary.
You might have to
wait. Dine with Rodney.
Yes.
Anyway.
I've seen him there many times, so that's why I'm saying, like, you might got to wait for him to leave if you want to sit in his booth.
What was the other restaurant you were going to mention? You thought?
Okay, well, so there was a chain of Mexican fast food restaurants. I don't know how far it went up your way, but down here it was called Noggles, right?
I've heard of it, yeah, but I don't think it was in Northern California much.
Okay. So Noggles is an offshoot of Del Taco.
Oh, okay. That did yeah.
I'm sorry, you know Del Taco, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off.
That's okay.
Just once I get going clearly about.
I'm just sitting here coughing anyway. It's like I'm not. I don't cough all day, and as soon as I get on recording, it's like, oh, stop. Anyway, and I don't have a cough button, so it's not like it's that professional here. I guess I could mute it, but I'm not going to do that.
I didn't even know there was a cough button. That's interesting.
Yes.
So out in Southern California, a lot of fast food chains started here. As you guys know, McDonald's started here, Taco Bell started here, Wiener Schnitzel started here, like everything started here, especially in the Inland Empire. So there was Glenn Bell, who created Taco Bell, right?
Yes.
So he hired the guys, or he worked with the guys who started Del Taco, right? So it started Glenn Bell. They worked with the Del Taco guys, and then the Del Taco guys opened up Del Taco. And a fun fact is, Ed Hackbarth, one of the creators of Del Taco, is still alive, and he still works at the Barstow Del Taco. So on your way to Las Vegas, get off at Lenwood Road, go to that Del Taco, and he's probably there, and we talked to him, and it was like amazing, because it is like fast food royalty, and he sat down and talked to us, and he's really cool. So they started Del Taco, and then they hired a guy named Dick Noggles to work with them. So Dick Noggles worked with the Ed Hack bars and the other guy, and so then Dick Noggle broke off and opened up Noggles. Now, when you go to Noggles, a lot of it seems similar to Del Taco, so you're kind of like, But anyways, a lot of people like Noggles. You're like, okay. But we did not eat at Noggles growing up. But it was certainly around during my childhood, and then it went out of business, and surprise, Del Taco bought them out when they went out of business. So Del Taco was like, But anyways, so Noggles came back. So there was a guy who missed Noggles, and he opened up a new one, and actually Del Taco took him to court or whatever, and he ended up winning the name. Like, he just wanted the name, and he ended up winning. So he opened up a Noggles location in Fountain Valley, California, and then he opened up one at the beach, like in a snack bar building down in Huntington Beach. So those were opening for a while, and it was original recipes, original names, and then he just opened up a brand new one in Stanton, California, that actually has a drive-through, and it's pretty legit. The one in Fountain Valley is like a small little building, like it's kind of like in a business park, but no, the new one, and so people are excited. We normally go to the Fountain Valley location. Okay, don't make fun of me, but there's a cat store down there we go to called Cat Country.
Oh, no.
So it's like, we're going down to Cat Country, but while we're there, we go to Noggles. And since I never ate at the original Noggles, I can't compare it, but it's pretty good. I like the fact that, like, the taco shells seem warm. Like, I know they're not, like, fresh. No one's back there frying them, but they're warm. Like, everything's been really good. So I've enjoyed going there, and I know people are jazzed, but like I said, I can't compare, but it's pretty good. So we have that. It has, resurfaced lately. So
that just reminded me of another one. This was around way back when, and I don't know if it's still there. Is Taco Tio?
No, I know what you mean, though. It was. Yeah. But that's been out of business quite a while.
Okay.
But that's another offshoot of Glen Bell, Taco Bell.
Oh, it is? I didn't know that.
Well, because so what happened was and it's still there, there's a restaurant in San Bernardino called Mitlas, Mitlas. It's on Route 66. It's been there forever. So Glen Bell worked there and stole their hard shell taco recipe and then opened up like a hamburger place across the street and sold like his tacos, right? So they're like, that's great. So, but from there, he went on to create Taco Bell. And I think the first Taco Bell opened up in Downey, California.
Okay.
So, and then Taco Tia, Baker's, like all of these fast food restaurants, Wiener Schnitzel, all stemmed from like the Inland Empire and have some kind of, they all worked with each other. So they all know Glen Bell. They all somehow, it's like 6 degrees of fast food out here. But speaking of Downey, you can go to Downey now, and they have the oldest standing McDonald's, operational McDonald's,
right.
on the corner of Lakewood Boulevard and Firestone.
Yeah.
And that has the Speedy sign. It's only walk up. So that's pretty amazing that is still there and operational. So Downey has a lot going for it, actually, for vintage restaurants and food. So that's just one of them.
Doesn't Downey have another Bob's Big Boy or something that's old? Or maybe I'm thinking of something else. I don't know.
No, you do. So their Bob's Big Boy wasn't originally a Bob's Big Boy. It was a place called Harvey's Broiler.
Oh,
so that was like your classic googie coffee shop, drive-in kind of a place. Then it changed to Johnny's Broiler. Then it was closed, and then someone bought the land and illegally started tearing it down.
Oh.
So they were like arrested, and it was like a big ordeal. So I think they lost the court case and had to pay City of Downey someone some money. But then Bob's Big Boy swooped in and rebuilt on that site, making their Bob's Big Boy look original as possible to the Harvey's Broiler. So that restaurant is actually called Bob's Big Boy Broiler.
Okay.
So it's all the food's the same.
Wow.
It's just looks different. So, but
Okay.
you're right.
Yeah.
So,
and then Here's one. The last one I saw was actually in Salinas, California, which is more up north. There's a street, I don't know if you know where Salinas is. It's a little bit south of San Jose. It's where the farmers are and everything. There's this one main street drag that's like, you go back in time and it's all the old restaurants. And the old designs, the old architecture. And they had Winchell's Donuts, Now I don't know if it's still the real Winchell's Donuts. I think they just let the sign up and it's something else. But it's there. So, but I knew Winchell's was out of L.A. too. I believe it.
And it came back too. So now.
Oh, it did.
Winchell,
okay, yeah.
You're right, because it did go out of business, and all the old Winchell's, you're right, because like the sign still was like the same shape. But it said, like, someone else's donut. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
it wasn't Winchell's. But, no, it's come back.
Well, at least down there.
Out here.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, it's not great. Like, I've stopped, and I'm like, they don't taste good, and they're not, like, the size is kind of small. No. So, I am not a big fan of the new Winchell's. But growing up, my dad used to go to Winchell's. Yeah. So that's what we ate growing up. But, no, it's still around down here. Yeah, I know. I wish I could say something nicer, but I can't. I'm sorry.
well, since I mentioned donuts, is there any good donut? Like even that, what's the one that has? It's the famous giant donut shape that you always see.
Randy's.
Randy's. Is that one any good? I haven't been there forever, so I don't.
It's I've only gotten donuts there, I think, like twice,
okay.
And they were fine. But if you want good donuts, I would recommend the Donut Man in Glendora. He's been on like Food Network and stuff before, but he's there on Route 66, and he is known for his strawberry glazed donuts. And actually, I think they should be coming out around now, but it's like a glazed donut, and he cuts it in half and puts like strawberries with the glaze in it. And people love them. It's open 24 hours, and the line's always down the street. Those are okay, but his other donuts are really good. He makes one called a Tiger Tail. And since they're so busy, the turnaround's really, like, the stuff's always fresh and hot. So, I would recommend Donut Man before Randy's. But Randy's is fine. I would go to Randy's before I'd go to Winchell's for sure. So. And then, but, there's mom and pop donut places that are good. Of course. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to know where to go.
Now, did you get, like, the chains coming back? Like, when I was a kid in the Bay Area, they did have Dunkin' Donuts, and they all went away. And then there's this one called Mr. Donut, which I discovered is big in Asia, but it went away in the United States.
Huh.
And but Dunkin' went away, and then they're talking about coming back. Did they start coming back as Dunkin', not Dunkin' Donuts? But I don't know why they can't have the donuts part. But but right. Have you seen them down there? I can't say anything about Oregon where I am because things don't come back here. It's like they haven't been here in the first place. So it's like.
Yeah. Well, no, you're right. They came back out here. So for like when I was a kid, I remember seeing like a Dunkin' Donuts once. Yeah. And then it went away. Yeah. It is like early 80s, right? Yeah. So the only, up until within the last, 5-6 years, the only Dunkin' Donuts around here that I would ever go to was in Las Vegas. There's still one inside of the Fremont Hotel. Yeah. So I would go visit a friend in Boston. And of course, when you go there, all it is Dunkies.
Oh, yeah. I know. Back east, different story, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, but no, they've come out here and they're okay. Like I said, I like their munchkins, but their donuts aren't that great. Yeah. And but my friend's like, in his best Boston accent, no, kid, it's the coffee. I'm like, well, I don't even think their coffee's that great either. And but people like it. I will give them this. When I've traveled places that, like out here in Oregon, like all West Coast, you can go to most restaurants and get, like, iced tea. Right? Like, when I go to, like, New York and, like, on the East Coast, you can't get, like, iced tea. Or a lot of times they don't give you, like, a soda in a glass with ice. It's like, here's a can of soda.
Yeah.
And I always make the joke. I'm like, oh, I guess I have to go to Long Island to get iced tea, But, I know, it's so stupid. But Dunkin' Donuts is the only place I can go to on the East Coast that will have iced tea for sure. So I will give them that. But no, they pop up out here a little bit, but not crazy. They're owned by Baskin Robbins or vice versa, or They own Baskin Robbins, so you usually see them together. It'll be like a half Dunkin', half Baskin Robbins. So.
Yeah. But that's a weirdness, just to say, like, in California, I don't know if it's in Southern California, but in Northern California, definitely this. They'll put KFC with A&W. Whereas up here in Oregon, you'll never see them together. They're always separate.
I think, and I can't go into too much details, but I have an ex-boyfriend who's in the food business, and he would talk to me about franchising like that. And I think some people let you. So if you have the space, I think some people would rather put 2 in 1. You know what I mean? Like, let's have a KFC and an A&W versus just having a KFC or just an A&W. The A&W came back too, remember, for a while, and now I think that's gone away because they went away, and then they started coming back out here, and they all went away.
Up here they still have them, and if you go to certain ones like down on the coast of Oregon, I think I posted a picture of this one, they still have the car hop service, so it's like...
That's amazing, yeah.
But most of them are just a little small shop, and you just go in like normal. But, it's like they're always separate, whereas, like I said, down there in California, they're together, It's like, okay.
Now, let me ask you. So when you travel anywhere or go anywhere different, do you go out of your way to go eat at a chain restaurant or any kind of restaurant that there where you are and you don't have in Oregon?
I try to. Like, it's like some people have differing opinions about this. Some people adore In-N-Out burgers. Some people hate In-N-Out burger. I'm more on the I like it than dislike it. They have one up here in Medford, which is about an hour and a half from here, so I'm not going to drive. They had one just open up in Kaiser, which is right by Salem. That's an hour north. So I'm not going to be, and it just opened, so it has long lines, and it's like, like you, I'm not going to wait an hour to get a burger that I already know about, or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if I'm in California and it's convenient and I get there, I usually try to get one because they're actually pretty good.
Yeah. I think they're good, but like I just said, they're good, but I'm not going to wait in that drive-through line that long for an In-N-Out burger, but yeah.
But the weird thing about Oregon is, so I live in Springfield, which you could just say Springfield, Eugene, same area, middle of the state. Okay. Everything chain-wise, I mean, you get the standards, the McDonald's, the Taco Bell, the KFC, but everything chain-wise that's a little less frequent, like a Popeye's fried chicken, or I can't even think of all of them off the top of my head, but you have to drive an hour or 2 hours north to either Salem or Portland to get any of them. For some reason, they just don't like coming around here. They just say,
And that's interesting because I've heard of Eugene, Oregon. You know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty big city,
I don't know if they have special rules, and that's the one thing. Like, years ago, this is where my interest in restaurants kind of took off, is when I went across country in '96. And that's when I first went to things like Shoney's, and I went to Cracker Barrel, and Waffle House, and things like that are never in California. I think Cracker Barrel is now, but I remember I talked to the people at Cracker Barrel at the time. They said, how come you don't have these in California? And the guy actually said, we will never open a Cracker Barrel in California. And they are open now. I think there's one in Sacramento or something. I don't know, but it took 20 years to do it, and probably maybe rules changed. But I did a little investigating, and it's like, I don't know about Oregon, but I know in California they have a lot more stringent rules about, health hazards and whatever, and how you handle meat and whatever, and so a lot of, especially if they didn't originate in California, they're just like, screw it, we're not going to go to California, too many rules and regulations, so, that's why.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. What were you saying?
Oh, that was about it.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, you're right, because like you, when I go on my trips to like the matchbook conventions or on vacation, I always like to eat at restaurants we don't have here. So Cracker Barrel was one, and I know they opened up, there's one in Victorville, and then there's one in Las Vegas. Okay. I think there's one in San Diego, but I won't eat at the ones here because I feel like that's my East Coast thing. But I eat at Waffle House when I'm near Waffle House. And when I'm in Maryland in June, when I go to the Matchbook Convention, we always eat at Roy Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
There's one right there, right? So I'm like, oh, we got to eat there. But last year at the Matchbook Convention, we were in Strongsville, Ohio, and we ate at a Lone Star Steakhouse. And we ate there, I think, like 2 or 3 times, and it was actually pretty good. And I even asked the manager, because there was an issue with my steak, so then he came over to the table. But we were talking, and I go, how come there's none in California? And he goes, well, he said, we're also, like, the same owners own them and Olive Garden or something, but it was the same thing where he says, we're not allowed to open up in California. Yeah. And he said he thought it might have to do because there was, like, Olive Gardens here, so maybe their portfolio has to be, I don't know. But, yeah, he said, that they will probably never go to California because there's some kind of something. But it was really good. I had no problem with it. I also like to go on the East Coast. They have a lot of, like, really, and in the Midwest, but, okay, everywhere except Western United States, like, their gas stations are really good. Like, you can get, like, food, like, real food there. Right. Like, if you go to Wawa or Sheetz or any of those. So I like to go to there, too, because I'm like, oh, it's so different than here. Even on my road trip, when I drove Route 66 to Oklahoma, I always stopped at QT. And, like, just amazing there. It's, like, all the different things. It's just our gas stations out here aren't nothing compared to gas stations anywhere else. So, it's different. So I do like to go check out stuff we don't have here. I do notice, though, when I do go to Maryland, there's a Jimmy John's right across the street. So when we don't go to Roy Rogers, we'll get food from Jimmy John's. But there, you can't get sprouts or avocado on your sandwich like you can at Jimmy John's here. So I don't know if they just can't get it, or they're like, oh, we ain't want none of that California stuff. I don't know, but
you can get it up here in Oregon. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's funny when you said, because you grew up in San Francisco. With my matchbook collecting and my other paper collecting, I do see restaurants and chains that, didn't exist here, but I know of them, like the Mr. Donut and things like that, just from my matches. Well, there are so many restaurants in San Francisco, that whole area. Yeah. And when I collect vintage napkins. I know everyone's like, shocker, but I do have a napkin collection. I can't tell you how many San Francisco napkins I get, or when I'm looking on eBay, there's just a bajillion vintage restaurant napkins, bar napkins from San Francisco, because it was just such a hotbed for restaurants, dining, clubs at that time. Like, I see more for there than I do here.
Yeah, I think there were more in San Francisco, and at least when I lived there. I mean, now it's kind of changing, because I've heard of places that were there when I was there that have all closed up, and a lot of it has to do with, it's kind of like Silicon Valley north, as it were, even though the other's north of you too. And so all the restaurants and mom and pop businesses are being pushed out, and just all the rich engineers are moving in all their companies, which is really strange, because when I lived there, it's like no high-tech company would be caught dead in San Francisco. The rent was too high for a business, so that's why they all opened up in San Jose and south. Now they don't care. So it's like whatever. But it does push out the mom and pop businesses, and it's like, like there's a restaurant, I hope it's still open, I'd have to look it up, in San Francisco I used to love. It was called All You Need, spelled Knead. So they made calzones and pizzas and all sorts of stuff, but it was really, really good. And it was one of these restaurants that catered to the late night crowd. So if you go in there at like 3 p.m. on a Sunday, that's when everybody's eating their breakfast. It's like and they had really strong coffee, and I love that place, and I used to take everybody there. I don't know if it's still there, but it was there a few years ago. But let's see. Last time I was in San Francisco was about a year ago, and we went to Mel's Diner, and I hate to say I got food poisoning.
Did did you like it? Or, I mean, like...
Well, okay, here's what happened. I like Mel's Drive-In, but, I had a burger, and it was undercooked, and I didn't know it, and we'll leave it at that. Yeah.
I'm all about talking food poisoning, so it's okay. But, that's one of my most popular videos on YouTube is me talking about getting food poisoning from Clifton's Cafeteria. But it's funny you brought up Mel's because we have some Mel's down here. And when I lived in Hollywood years ago, I used to go to the one in Hollywood fairly often only because, one, it had a parking lot. They all have parking, so it was easy to park. And sometimes you just want, like, a basic meal, you know what I mean? Like, I just want a hamburger. I just want something easy, you know? So I didn't hate Mel's, you know? I don't love it, but at the time, you know, it served its purpose, you know? I guess when you didn't want to go to Denny's, like a step up from Denny's, you go to Mel's.
It seemed like I liked it better when I lived there, and it had nothing to do with the getting sick. It was more to do with it's just not as good as it once was. I don't know, but maybe it's that time. You know, I don't know.
No, and that could be it too. Like I said, just some places I think once, you know, it gets sold or other family own it or whatever, it's just the heart's not there anymore.
Right.
So the food just starts going down with it, you know, and it's sad. Yeah. But like I said, there's some places that are still kicking and they're good. So it just proves, you know, if you want to, you can make it happen.
Right.
I don't know if you saw my Facebook a couple weeks ago, because I've been selling matches on eBay lately to supplement some money, and I had one on there for Ole's Waffle shop, and I actually have quite a bit from Ole's, O-L-E, I guess at Ole's, because I do collect pancakes, waffles, donuts, matches, and this one was for a location in Alameda and one in Oakland. So I ended up selling it, and when I was packing it up, I realized it's still open, and they're the ones who bought the matchbook. So it's the location in Alameda. So I looked it up, and it looks exactly like it did, I'm sure, you know, 70 years ago or whatever when this matchbook
I've heard of it, but I've never eaten there because, you know, even though I was in the Bay Area, I didn't go to the East Bay as often, you know. Just because, I go to, I was in Berkeley again, you know, it's like I went to California a lot last year, strangely enough. This year, nothing so far, but I'm trying to save my money too, but, it's like, East Bay, there's a few good things over there that I can't think of off the top of my head that, you know, you go over across the bay for, but most of the time, there is so much stuff in San Francisco, is like, why bother going over there?
Yeah, no, I get that. And I'm not super familiar. I've been to San Francisco, like, twice, and they were for, like, a minute each time. But I do want to go. Yeah. The only thing that holds me back is just the lodging is so expensive. But I want to go to the paper show up there just because I want to see someone else's junk. You know, I go to the paper show down here, and it's the same dealers. You know what I mean? So I want to go. But if I do... there's some restaurants in San Francisco I want to go to. I want to try to go to the Ole's, but I want to check out the All You Need if it's still there too.
That's on Haight Street somewhere.
Is it? Okay. I would love to. Like I said, I'm not familiar. Like all I know about San Francisco is through like matchbooks. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I definitely want to go and sightsee and check things out. So. That's my next trip, maybe.
Cool. Just another aside and just different things we were talking about. It pops in my head. You know, you're talking about the one restaurant that is different than Olive Garden, but probably the same thing with a different name. The other one I can think of is Carl's Jr. And Hardee's merged, so they both have the star on it, but they don't call it Hardee's out here. They still call them Hardee's out there.
Yeah.
And then I was reading up on it today. Is like in Canada they have a chain of burger restaurants called Harvey's, and so they think, oh, Harvey's sounds very similar. So when they open new shops up in Canada, they're all Carl's Jr.'s. So.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's why, like, when I do travel and people are like, do you want to go to Hardee's? I'm like, no, because I can just go to Carl's Jr. back at home. I have not eaten at a Whataburger. I know that's big, like, in Texas and down there. I never ate at one of those. I'm trying to think now. I really try not to eat chains when I go anywhere, but sometimes you just have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I'll eat a regional chain over McDonald's. I can eat McDonald's anywhere.
Yeah.
So, I know. Now I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think where I've been where it's something we don't have here. I don't know. It'll come to me, but it's just it's just something different.
And then just as an aside on the whole, Rodney Bingenheimer and all the other stuff you were talking about earlier just popped in my head. Up here in Eugene is the Denny's where Jack Nicholson bought the sandwich in 5 easy pieces. And so the Denny's is up here.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
It's on a little hill, and it's like, yep, that's the Denny's where you ordered the sandwich. So,
well, now I know. So now when I go, I want to go there and check it out.
And there's another thing up here. If you ever do an Oregon trip, if you're a Nicholson fan, they shot One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest up here, up in Salem. So, so things like that. Anyway, but that's an aside.
Oh, no. I really like stuff like that. Like, even when I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when they're at Musso and Frank's, I'm like, oh, there's our table is right there behind Al Pacino. That stuff always, I would love to go see that Denny's and be like, because why not, right? Like, stuff really sucks nowadays. So if you can find happiness and just fun, cheesy stuff like that, then do it. And I think that's why I also I think that's why I do like going to the vintage restaurants, because it's just like I said, it's history, it's eating, and it's just something fun to do, because they do get shut down all the time. I can't tell you how many times I turn around, I'm like, oh crap, I was going to go there in 2 weeks, and they just shut down, So the advice I can give to everyone is do it while you can. Even if you just go and eat a piece of pie and coffee, because you can't afford it, just do it and enjoy yourself.
Well, I'll mention some ones that I think have gone out of business. See if you've gone there. Hamburger Hamlet was one.
Yes, actually, I've been to. They're out of business.
Yeah.
But I've been to. There was one on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah.
I've been to, and then I've been to the one in West Hollywood, which isn't the original, but it was moved down the street. So I have been there before, and I remember they were good. I don't remember too much, but it was good.
And then there's a series of 3 restaurants, but they ended up getting gobbled up by Coco's, which is now out of business too. But there's Colony Kitchen, Mr. Up, and Hobo Joe's. Do you remember any of those?
I've never been there, but I know of them because I have matches from them.
Oh, okay.
So
I still have children's menus of those things, because I used to get them as a kid, and there are always these like little coloring menus and stuff, and I just save them, so I have junk like that in my collection.
Let me ask you if you remember, if you've been here, because this is one of my favorite restaurants still, and I always talk about it, is Sizzler, or like I like to call it Sizzler.
Okay, there is a Sizzler literally across the street from where I live, and I have not been to it yet.
What? Oh my God! You need to go to Sizzler.
Well, wait a minute. What type of Sizzler is it? Is it the old steakhouse Sizzler with the cows, or is it the buffet Sizzler?
Well, no, Sizzler is the one with the cows because they have steak and the all-you-can-eat shrimp.
Okay.
But they have like a salad bar. Their salad bar is pretty good. Like, I'll get the salad bar, but I don't get salad. I get whatever else they have there. But it's probably the same.
I'll make the effort. The only reason why is because there's this mom-and-pop place it's literally across the street from where I live called Gateway Grill, and it's wow. So I go there a lot.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a chain up here called Elmer's that's not bad, that's up here too, and things like that. So.
I think I've heard of the Elmer's before.
Yeah. Well, they're in Oregon, I know that. I don't know if they're in California, but let's see, what else? I think I mentioned everything I was going to mention. Ones that have gone out of business. There's one other one. Well, I wanted to say this about Mr. Up, and I wish I could remember where it was located. My dad would know. He says, "Oh, that was where blah blah blah." But Mr. Up, the only reason it was called Mr. Up is you took an elevator to go up to the restaurant. And
I didn't know that.
It had a logo of a little guy in a hot air balloon. Yeah. But that was
I didn't know that.
That was the gimmick. You went up in an elevator.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that, so I'm glad you told me that.
And then, along with Coco's, there's like this other restaurant, I don't know if they're around anymore, called Reuben's. And they used to have a couple boat restaurants that are called Reuben E. Lee or something.
Yeah.
I think
Well, it's so funny you said this. Because Reuben's is owned by Coco's.
okay.
Right. So, and actually, I used to collect Reuben's matchbooks because it always was like Reuben's and then the city that they were in.
Yeah.
And they tore down our Coco's. Well, we had two Coco's, and they tore them both down. But the one by my house used to have a Reuben's, and when I moved here, the Reuben's has been long out of business. But when you walked up to the Coco's, you can see where you had to go downstairs, and like the Reuben's was under the Coco's. But you're right; they had the Reuben E. Lee, which there was one. I want to say like Newport or Balboa.
Yeah.
When you go on PCH, you'd see it. They also had a chain called the Plank House.
Yeah.
It was the same exact matchbook, same exact font, but it just said the Plank House. So, yeah, you're right. I don't know if they owned Coco's or Coco's owned.
Well, now I just, and this is from doing my research today. Did you have Caro's down in Southern California?
Yes, we do or did.
Yeah, it would be did because both Coco's and Caro's have now been gobbled up by a chain that's up here in Oregon called Sherry's. And I don't know if that made it back down to California, but it's Sherry's. They sell pies and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
But,
that's interesting. Yeah, because you're right. Because all the Caro's turned into Coco's, but now the Coco's are closed. But I remember as a kid when Bob's Big Boy went out the original time, those were gobbled up by either Caro's or Coco's. Like they all turned into a Coco's.
It's just funny how that happens, but
Coco's. I'll give this to Coco's. I thought their food was good, and I thought their pies were really good. Actually, they had a cream cheese pie that I still like. Caro's, on the other hand, like the couple times I went, was not good at all. So my problem with Coco's, though, is the service is always slow as hell.
That's true.
Any Coco's you go into, the service was always super slow.
That's true.
So there are a few left. I know there's like one or two in Pasadena that I've seen. There's one in Redlands still, but no, you're right. Our Coco's, they tore it down and they built a brand new Chick-fil-A, which is another chain we haven't talked about yet. But,
I think Chick-fil-A, regardless of their political leanings, is overrated. That's my humble opinion of it. I could care less about their political leanings. I just said, let's try it. And it's like, it's not that good. I'm sorry, Popeyes has you beat.
No, and it's funny because everything at Chick-fil-A that I do like is it's not the chicken. I think their ice cream is really good. I like their iced tea. But yeah, everything but the chicken. But what's interesting is when I go to Maryland for my matchbook convention, there's also a Chick-fil-A across the street. They have like a drive-through that's like 3 drive-throughs. It's like the In-N-Out of Maryland. 3 drive-thrus, and they have the person out there taking the order, like an In-N-Out. And I'm like, this is just Chick-fil-A. Are you kidding me? But I've seen other Chick-fil-A's where the line is huge. And even if Popeyes didn't even exist, Chick-fil-A is not that great. I don't get the appeal.
I mean, it's edible. I mean, but it's not like, all that, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I don't get it. I do like their cow mascots, but other than that, I'm like, what do you think about Jack in the Box?
As a kid, I hated it. And we're talking. Okay, so I'm 53 now, so I can remember 50 years ago. My dad took me and I think it was just me and to see this guy about opening up Baskin Robbins franchise, and I think it morphed into my dad opening his own business, but it wasn't a franchise. But I was 3, so I don't remember. The only thing I remember then is the burgers. Do you remember Rosanna Dana?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's one time she's talking about being a waitress or something like that, and she or eating at a restaurant and talking about toenails being in the burger, and I go, that's what it was. That's what they had at Jack in the Box. They had toenails in the burger. And so I hated it for years, and then I think I don't know who owned it then. This is like 1970. And then somewhere along the line, Purina bought them out. And they actually had the checkerboard square on there, which I thought was hysterical. And that was when I lived in Southern California. And then the present owner, food maker or whatever, bought them in the late 70s. And then I loved it then. And they had, like, the best nachos ever. And then they took those away years later. But now it's like, it's okay. I mean, if I want a cheap, grungy taco, I like the 2 tacos sometimes.
Yep.
But they're not $1 anymore. They're $1.29. It's like, what?
Well, do you know you can get mini tacos now at Jack in the Box?
I saw that there when I ordered recently. I didn't know if I wanted that much taco. It looks like a lot of them.
Well, because I think they've been trying to give Taco Bell a run for their money when it comes to like the stoner menu.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the little tacos are on the stoner menu. And at first they're appealing. I'm like, but I guess they're just the meat and shell.
Yeah.
There's no cheese, there's less, and I'm like, gross. But then you can get them with the stuff on top, which I'm too, it's like I always joke. It's like sometimes I wish I smoked weed because that would give me an excuse to eat all this bad food, and I don't, But there was a Jack in the Box across the street from my house growing up, and I sometimes it's not great, but I have to give them props for being like original.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like their advertising's always great. Their ideas are always great, and there's one everywhere, at least out here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're like, oh, good, there's a Jack.
I do like it that they have breakfast all day, and they have so for years. It's like, I never understood McDonald's thing. It's like, oh, we can't have an Egg McMuffin on the same grill as a burger. Well, they do now, but when they did that, when they suddenly made McDonald's breakfast all day, they cut like half their menu items, I noticed. And so it's like...
Well, why can't I get a McRib at 9 o'clock in the morning? That's where I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, so when they're like, oh, guess what? Now we're serving breakfast all day. How about you start serving hamburgers all day?
Right,
like, why do I need to wait till 11 o'clock on a weekend to get a McRib or whatever? This is ridiculous. So thank you so much. And it's like, and it's true, because any other fast food place you go to that's open in the morning, you can get the full menu anytime.
Yeah.
I mean, breakfast, some places
breakfast,
cut it off,
Carl's Jr. still cuts it off. I know that. I tried it. And so I zipped out, and I go, damn it. It was like 5 minutes later. It was like, oh, sorry, sir, we stopped at 10:30. It was 10:35, and it's like, I wasn't checking the clock, and it's like, so I zipped out of the line. So, okay, sorry, bye. And then I went to the Jack in the Box because...
You're right. They might as well just serve all of it all the time. Other restaurants do. But I will say, like, my roommate, he's one of those people that can, like, whatever. Like, okay, even for breakfast, I'm not a big breakfast eater. I'll go out once in a while. Let's go have some eggs and pancakes or whatever. But I want, like, food for breakfast. Yeah. So, but my roommate, on the other hand, so say, like, it's a weekend, whatever, and he's futzing around the house, and he finally leaves, like, at, 12, 1 to go out for the day. He'll still want breakfast. Like, his first meal has to be breakfast.
Oh, well, I'm not like that.
No. It's noon. What? Are you like that?
No, I'm not. I mean, I will eat a late breakfast, but if it gets too late, I just kind of like, I just need food. It doesn't have to be breakfast.
And so we get into it, because I'm like, well, if I go out with him, and I'm like, well, no, I want to go somewhere that's, like, not just a breakfast, because even by 10 o'clock in the morning, right? I'm like, no, we need to go somewhere that has some lunch. And I think maybe this stems from the fact that, I start work at dark 30. So by the time it's 10 o'clock, it's almost my lunchtime anyways. Yeah. But no, we always have to go to a place that's breakfast all day, so he can get breakfast at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So,
well, he'd like all you need then. Anyway,
I know. So that's why just the whole McDonald's thing is always such a sore spot with me. Because I'm one of the only people I like McDonald's. And I think it also stems from when growing up. You like what you ate growing up, I guess. So we always went to McDonald's, Taco Bell, Jack in the Box, Subway. We go to Carl's Jr. eventually. But, I was, in high school, the first time I had a Whopper, because we didn't go to Burger King, or Del Taco, places like that my dad didn't like, so we didn't go there. Yeah. So that's why, McDonald's and Taco Bell always have a soft spot. But I will say, at least when I go to McDonald's, and we're not getting into details, but McDonald's has to be the only place that's never upset my stomach, ever. Stuff's usually hot.
Yeah.
It's fresh. I do love McRib. I don't care what people say. It's delicious. So
you can have mine then.
Okay, great. And I know it's only around for 2 weeks out of the year, but whatever. So it's like,
because it's not real. No, anyway.
You
grow it in the lab. Anyway.
Did you see that article going around about McDonald's where people are like, oh, they tested those touchscreens and it came back with feces germs or whatever.
Yeah.
Someone told me that, and I looked at them and I'm like, I eat McRibs. Do you think that's gonna matter to me? Really? No, I do. I like McDonald's. I'm sorry. I just do. Carl's Jr. is okay.
Yeah.
It's too messy.
Yeah. Here's a weirdness. I'll tell you the truth, and this is my confession. I've told people, and they don't believe me, but when I was a kid, I didn't like McDonald's. And this is before they got the breakfast, so they did serve burgers in the morning. I didn't like soda pop either, so it's like there was nothing there. I used to get way back when I could, and this is before McNuggets and everything, so they only had burgers. I could somehow eat the fish sandwich, which I still love to this day, and the orange drink. And I liked their fries then. I don't like McDonald's fries anymore because they don't make them, In-N-Out makes them the way they used to make them at McDonald's, but that's, So anyway, over the years I grew to love McDonald's, so it's like I like it now, but as a kid I was like,
Yeah. Well, since you made fun of Mike McRib, I gotta make fun of your filet of fish because that's like the thing that has the most calories on the menu.
Oh, I know, but it's not. That's the only thing I could eat because. See, here's a weird thing. It's like people. It's like as a kid, I could only eat McDonald's hamburgers. I couldn't stand any other hamburger. It's like as a kid, I could only eat my mom's hamburgers. My mom was like the only person who could make a hamburger right. Yeah. I don't know why. It's like why can't these restaurants make it the way my mom makes it? And it's like my mom wasn't the greatest cook in the world, but it's like, it's like. And I realize it's because, my mom bought decent ground round or whatever and just knew how to cook it right, It's like she didn't burn it, she didn't, it wasn't tasteless, and it was like...
Yeah, that's how I feel about my steak. Like, my dad makes my steak exactly how I like it, which is medium rare, a little more medium than rare. If I go to a real steakhouse, they can do it, but anywhere else, I just have to order it medium. Because if I order it medium rare, it comes too rare. Except Outback Steakhouse. Surprisingly, when I tell them exactly how I'd like it, it comes out that. So I'll throw them that bone. At least they do that correctly. But going back to In-N-Out fries, I will say, though, I do not like In-N-Out fries.
What?
No. Because, and here's the thing. I remember I was in high school. And I was at my friend's house, and we had In-N-Out. And I said the same thing. I'm like, I don't like In-N-Out fries. And my friend's mom was like, that's just if you don't know what fresh, potato fries taste like. And I looked at her, and I'm like, I don't know. My dad makes, fried potatoes on the stove all the time. It doesn't taste like this. I think my problem with In-N-Out fries is like, by the time you get them, I know they're fresh, but even though by the time you get them or you go home and sit, they're not that great.
Oh, you can't go home. You have to eat them there.
I guess. Yeah, you're right. But it's not as flavorful, I guess. I don't know.
But I'm kind of implying more of how fresh they are because now it's just the frozen bag. You take it out of the freezer and pour it in the fryer. Whereas in the old days, they both used to take fresh potatoes and chop them up. So that's the difference. So.
Well, I do like I like McDonald's fries. I like Wiener Schnitzel fries actually a lot too. And Del Tacos are good, but those have to be fresh too.
Yeah. Now, as a kid, since I didn't like McDonald's, I loved Kentucky Fried Chicken when I was a kid. I loved it, and then I loved Wiener Schnitzel when I was a kid, corn dogs especially. So.
Yeah. Wiener Schnitzel.
Wiener Schnitzel.
Well, I had Kentucky Fried Chicken. I still call it that. I don't call it KFC. But I had Kentucky Fried Chicken recently when my dad was in the hospital in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So, and he hated the hospital food, which I ate at the cafeteria. I thought the hospital food was pretty good. But anyways, so my dad's like, complaining the whole time. So the only thing he would eat was like a sausage McMuffin from McDonald's. I had to get that for him. And then he wanted Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I'm like, I'll bring you some Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
So I ordered some and brought it. It was so disgusting.
Okay.
And expensive. I'm like, I'd rather go to Popeyes, or I'd rather get grocery store fried chicken.
Well, here's the story. Here's my weird story on Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know, it's like I loved it as a kid, and then we're talking about 10, 20 years ago, probably. I ate it a few times, and I didn't really get sick, but I felt sick after I ate it, and so I finally had to say never again. And then I moved up here, and the prices are cheaper up here. And, you know, I had read that they had improved the recipes because a lot of people were complaining that it had gone downhill. And so I said, all right, I'll give it a chance. So it's actually good up here. Now, I don't eat it every day, but it's like it's more like the way I remembered it as a kid. And it's like, wow, that's pretty good. But here's one thing I found out. Do you have Five Guys down in Southern California?
Yes,
okay.
And I don't care for that at all.
Okay. Here's a weird thing. Five Guys in California stinks. It's awful. I feel ill every time. I used to have a boss at a job that I worked at down there. He loved to take us there, so I'd go. And then we'd all invariably, like an hour later, feel ill.
Yeah.
And he'd repeatedly take us there, but it got to the point where I couldn't eat. I'd just go along for the ride. I don't care if it's a free burger. I can't do it. Anyway, everybody up here in Oregon, oh no, Five Guys is great. And it's like, I don't believe you. And then I finally went, and I go, oh my God, it's good up here, you know. So I guess things vary from state to state sometimes. So it's good up here. You know.
Yeah, no, and you're right, because I've had it, and the only thing I do like about it is the fact that when I, like at work, I can order online and I can get like a burger bowl, right, without a bun. So I get like a cheeseburger, but I get like extra peppers and onions and mushrooms, so it's like a whole meal. I like that aspect of it, but everything I've eaten there has not been good, and I don't get why it's so popular everywhere else.
Yeah.
Well, if I go to Oregon, I'll try it up there, but it better be good, or I'm going to call you and be like, you said this is going to be good. This is crap. No, you're right. I don't eat there. You know, I'm okay with Chipotle. You know, like, let's talk new fast food. Like,
okay.
Chipotle's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I do find it interesting that, you know, people will crap on McDonald's, but every 5 seconds, Chipotle has some kind of, you know, recall or some.
Yeah, I haven't eaten at Chipotle since they had all those scares, and so. But I used to like it.
Yeah.
So.
So it's okay. What else is a new place? Or is there a new place that I like? Oh, you know what? Have you eaten at The Habit?
Once, and I liked it, but that's not up here. It's down.
Okay. That's pretty good. I'll eat there. There's so many new places now. You're just like, dang, you know, you got to try them all. But no, I like The Habit. I like Blaze Pizza actually a lot because it's pretty cheap and you can make your pizza how you want it. They're pretty good. So yeah, you know, and going back to the vintage restaurant parts of it, like people think that's all I eat, and not really. I mean, I do like hipstery restaurants, you know, chic, healthy kind of stuff. I don't always eat just like, you know, pot roast and you know, this old school dining. And for a while, I had to take a break because, and it was when I was like trying to work to get at 100, where I was going out like every weekend. But for a while, I'm like, okay, now I have to go back to sushi and quinoa and healthy eating because vintage restaurant eating is a very unhealthy way to eat. And I think that's why I went Mexican for a while, just because I'm like, okay, I can just have a bean burrito. You know, it's fine. But no, I gotta say, I mean, I do think food's gotten better. Here's the thing. I don't think dining has gotten better.
Yeah.
But food quality, I think, has gotten better. And, if people are eating better, then that's great. Great on them. I can't make fun of that at all. I just wish people, maybe try out a good old mom and pop kind of place.
Yeah.
It may not look the cleanest, but whatever. That's 70 years of history, on the carpet, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Here's one I'll leave you with, because we've gone over an hour here, and we didn't talk records, but how about next show?
Yes,
Anyway.
we'll do records next time.
Okay, but my dad talked about this one, and I believe it was like in Anaheim or something, but I don't think it's around anymore, but I always laugh hysterically when he mentions it. They sold tacos and donuts, and it was called Tac Dough.
Tac Dough. Huh. That's what you stumped me on that one.
I think it was around in the 60s, maybe the 70s, but I never went to it. But I was like the combination and the name Tac Dough.
Tac Dough. No, now I gotta look at my matches to see if I have one. But,
that'd be funny. Start collecting souvenirs for that.
Yeah, one for me. That's interesting. There is, Anaheim was also a really big hotbed for vintage restaurants, and they still have a few there. My favorite Anaheim vintage restaurant is called Mexicasa, and which I guess is Mexa-Home, right? I guess. If you want. So Mexicasa started somewhere in Anaheim, like in the 60s, and then there was a restaurant called The Kettle, and that was like that typical, I guess, turn of the century, if not earlier, style colonial looking restaurant. It was next to a hotel. So The Kettle went out of business and Mexicasa moved in there. Well, if you go now, it still looks the same. It looks like 1968 version of colonial America. And the food is whatever. It's very, this is what I call it. It's like 1968 Anaheim white people Mexican food. And they only take cash.
Oh.
But it is ridiculously cheap. You can feed your entire family for like $20.
Wow.
At this place. But they make, and this just proves how sometimes the simplest things are delicious. They have a dish, it's just called chips and cheese, and it's just tortilla chips with a mound of shredded cheese, and they put it under the broiler, and they bring it out to you, and it's delicious. So, like I said, sometimes simple's best, and it's really good there. So that's my favorite Anaheim. But now I have to go look up this Tac Dough.
You'll be like me. I collect I collect a lot of the stuff you collect, but I collect vintage theme park memorabilia for theme parks that don't exist, and so you'll start collecting all this
anymore, or not exist, period.
Anymore, yeah.
Oh.
There's this East Coast one called Freedom Land that only lasted about 4 years in the early 60s. But I will collect stuff from it because I think it's fascinating, and I know the backstory behind it, which makes it more fascinating. So.
Well, now I'll keep my eye out for you.
All right.
Because I know there's Freedom Land matches. I've seen them.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'll keep my eye out for you.
I have like a record album and a few other little postcards and diddly things like that. Anyway, but all right. Well,
thanks for having me again. And like I said, next time we'll talk records.
Yes, I will make a note of it. You'll probably be in season 3 because I'm almost to the end of my season here.
Good.
But pleasure talking to you again. Yeah. And anything you want to promote? Anything you want to say before we go?
I do have my YouTube channel. It's just D McKinney, DMCKINNEY. But I do have on there, we can get more on it the next time, but I have my record reviews on there, which are called Smart and Vinyl, wah wah. And I talk, and my whole goal behind it is I just want people interested in records. And so I just review records in my collection or just talk records.
Yeah.
And I also have videos about matchbook collecting, thrift store shopping, anything like that. So if you guys would be so kind as to check me out, subscribe, tell a friend, like Alpha Beta would say, I appreciate that. So once again,
ancient reference there, but then we're saying talk though.
Alpha
So.
Beta I always say tell a friend after my videos because of alpha beta. But
Cool.
but check out my YouTube channel, and that's it. And like I always say, if anyone has any questions regarding matchbooks, vintage collectibles, anything, find me on Facebook, shoot me a message, and we'll talk. So thanks for having me again. I always love being on your show.
Thank you again. All right, talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you soon. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Denise McKinney, for being my special guest. Episode number 70 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Pills in the pink electric church. The final flicker of your lewd jeweled boob to